The morning sun poured through my kitchen windows, casting a warm glow across the granite countertops of my new villa. I sipped my coffee, expecting a day filled with holiday planning, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, Brianna. My heart lifted. Finally, a response about our Christmas dinner plans. But as I read her message, the warmth drained from me. We want to spend Christmas quietly with the in-laws. The words stung like a slap. I read them again, hoping I'd misunderstood. My grip tightened on the phone, my knuckles turning pale. For 30 years, I'd poured everything into my family. Every sacrifice, every dollar, every moment of support. And now this? A cold dismissal, as if I were an afterthought. I typed back, "Enjoy yourselves," and set the phone down, my mind racing with memories of all I'd done for her. I'd always been there for Brianna. When she went to Emory University, I paid $60,000 a year for her tuition, even as she switched majors 3 times, psychology, then communications, then business. "Dad, this is my passion now," she'd say, and I'd nod, writing another check without complaint. Her wedding to Cody cost me $45,000 alone. "We want it to be perfect, Dad," she'd said, glowing in a dress that cost more than a car, while Cody's family brought a fruit tray and smiles. Last year, I gave them $80,000 for a down payment on their perfect house. "It's for our future kids, Daddy," she'd promised. But no kids came, and neither did gratitude, just more requests. Car repairs, credit card debt, vacations, home upgrades. Every call started the same. "Dad, I hate to ask, but..." I walked to the window, staring at my manicured garden. This villa, purchased last month for $2.8 million, was supposed to be my reward. After decades of hard work, smart investments. In cryptocurrency when others called it a gamble, tech startups when people said I was too old, a consulting business that thrived because I stayed sharp. This was my sanctuary. I dreamed of hosting a grand Christmas dinner here, with my family marveling at what I'd built. Instead, Brianna's text made it clear. I was just a wallet to her, not a father. Her words echoed in my mind. "Spend Christmas quietly with the in-laws." Translation: "You're not welcome, Dad." The hurt twisted into something colder, harder. I was done being taken for granted. This Christmas, I'd show them what a celebration looked like with people who actually valued me. I grabbed my phone and called my brother, Robert. He'd always seen through Brianna's behavior, but kept quiet for my sake. Not anymore. The phone rang twice before his gravelly voice answered. "David, perfect timing. I was just thinking about Christmas." "Robert, are you and Sarah free for Christmas dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I'm hosting at the villa." "Hell yes," he said. "Sarah's been dying to see your new place." "What's going on?" "I thought you were going to Brianna's." I glanced at her text, still glowing on my screen. "Change of plans. She's doing a quiet Christmas with Cody's family." There was a long pause. Then Robert's voice turned sharp. "That ungrateful. David, how long are you going to let her treat you like a bank?" "No more," I said, the words feeling right. "Can you call Mark and Janet? Tell them they're invited too. And the Hendersons, if they're around." "Consider it done," Robert said. "This is going to be the best Christmas dinner you've ever thrown. People who actually appreciate you." After hanging up, I walked through my villa with fresh eyes. The dining room, big enough for 12, with its polished mahogany table. The chef's kitchen, gleaming with double ovens and a massive island. The living room, with its soaring fireplace. And floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. This wasn't just a house, it was a statement. And I was ready to make it. Next, I called Tom Richardson, my old business partner who'd helped me land a Samsung deal that earned me millions. "David, never a bad time for you," Tom said when he picked up. I explained my plan: a Christmas dinner at the villa, close friends only, December 23rd at 6 p.m. "Are you kidding?" he said. "Linda and I have been dying to see your place. Count us in." Then I called Patricia Webb, who'd been there when my startup went public. Her enthusiasm was just as warm. "David, this sounds amazing. I'll bring my famous tiramisu if you want." I smiled for the first time that day. These were my people, friends who valued me for more than my money. By noon, my guest list was set. 10 people who'd celebrate with me, not because of what I could give them, but because they wanted to be there. I moved to my home office, grabbing a notepad to plan the menu. Prime rib from Morton's, roasted vegetables, twice baked potatoes, Caesar salad, and Patricia's tiramisu. I'd pair it with the 2018 Cassis Cabernet I'd been saving. Brianna and Cody were disqualified from that bottle now that I spent the afternoon preparing the villa. In the living room, I rearranged the leather sectional to face the fireplace, pulling in extra chairs from the formal sitting room. The open floor plan was perfect for entertaining, something I planned when I bought the place, though I'd imagined different guests. By 4 p.m., the catering order was placed, the house was spotless, and my vision was coming to life. Tomorrow night, this villa would be filled with laughter, good food, and real connection. The doorbell rang at 6 p.m. sharp. Through the foyer windows, I saw Robert's familiar outline, holding a bottle of wine, with Sarah beside him carrying a covered dish. I opened the door, and Robert grinned. "David, this place is unreal," Sarah gasped, stepping inside and taking in the two-story entryway with its curved staircase and sparkling chandelier. "The photos don't do it justice. These windows," she gestured to the glass walls framing the gardens, before I could respond. Car doors slammed outside. Tom and Linda Richardson stepped out of their BMW, followed by Mark and Janet Henderson in their Mercedes. Soon, my foyer was alive with voices, hugs, and laughter. "David, this is incredible," Linda said, turning slowly to take in the space. "When you said you bought a villa, I pictured something nice. Not this." Their words warmed me in a way Brianna's never had. These people weren't here for what I could give them. They were here for me. I led them through the villa, pointing out the details I'd chosen with care. The imported marble fireplace, the custom bookshelves, the state-of-the-art sound system. Each feature drew gasps and genuine praise. "You've really made it, David," Mark said, clapping my shoulder. All those years of smart moves paid off. Dinner was a triumph. The prime rib was perfectly cooked, the wine flowed, and conversation filled the air. Patricia's tiramisu was a hit, and Robert told stories that had everyone laughing until their sides hurt. My phone buzzed a few times, but I ignored it, too caught up in the moment. This was what I'd envisioned when I bought the villa. Night of joy with people who mattered. Late in the evening, as we lingered over coffee, the doorbell rang, followed by pounding. I frowned, excusing myself to answer it. Through the glass, I saw Brianna and Cody, their faces twisted with anger. I opened the door, and Brianna stormed in, Cody trailing behind. "What the hell, Dad?" she shouted, holding up her phone. "You're throwing a party without us?" I realized she'd seen the photos Robert had posted online. Shots of the villa, the table laden with food, my friends laughing. "Brianna," I said calmly, "you said you wanted a quiet Christmas with Cody's family." Her eyes narrowed. "So you throw this?" Rubbing it in our faces. Before I could respond, she grabbed a crystal vase from a side table, one I'd bought at an auction for $3,000, and hurled it to the floor. It shattered, scattering shards across the marble. Cody froze, looking horrified, but Brianna wasn't. "Done. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? All your money, your fancy house." My guests had gathered in the foyer, watching in stunned silence. Robert stepped forward, but I held up a hand. "Brianna," I said, my voice low, "you made your choice. You didn't want me at your Christmas. This is mine." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her face crumpling. Cody tugged her arm, muttering, "Let's go." As they left, I saw the regret in her eyes, but it was too late. The damage was done, both to the vase and to whatever was left of our relationship. After they left, Sarah swept up the glass while Tom poured me a fresh glass of wine. "You okay, David?" he asked quietly. I nodded, looking around at my friends. "Better than okay." That night, I realized something. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up, who see you, who value you. Brianna and Cody would regret their actions, but I wouldn't regret mine. This Christmas, I'd found my real family, and my villa was finally the home I'd dreamed it would be. The grand dining room glowed with warmth, the long mahogany table set, with sparkling crystal glasses and polished silverware. The scent of roasted prime rib and fresh pine from the Christmas tree filled the air. I, David, stood at the head of the table, surveying the scene with a mix of pride and relief. After years of hard work, I'd finally built a life I could be proud of, a stunning new home, a successful consulting business, and tonight, a Christmas dinner surrounded by friends who genuinely cared about me. It was a moment I'd earned, and I was ready to savor it. Patricia Webb arrived fashionably late, her famous tiramisu cradled in her arms. She was already snapping photos with her phone before she even set the dessert down. "David, this place is incredible. You have to. Let me post these on Facebook. Everyone needs to see how happy you look," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. I hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Why not? I'd worked hard for this. My investments in Bitcoin, my consulting business, my sacrifices, they'd all led to this moment. I deserved to share it with people who celebrated my success, not those who envied it or saw it as something to exploit. The evening flowed effortlessly. We started with cocktails in the living room, the fire crackling as soft holiday music played in the background. Guests mingled, their laughter mixing with the clink of glasses. Soon, we moved to the dining room, where the table was a masterpiece. Golden roasted prime rib, creamy mashed potatoes, vibrant green beans, and bottles of rich red wine that glowed like rubies in the candlelight. The conversation was just as rich, weaving between old memories, current projects, and dreams for the future. "Remember when you told us about Bitcoin?" Tom said, raising his glass toward me with a grin. "We thought you'd lost your mind." "Some of us," Linda corrected, nudging her husband with a playful laugh. "I told Tom we should have followed your lead, but he was too chicken." "Best decision you ever ignored me on," Tom admitted, shaking his head. "Look at you now, David. This house, this life, you've done good." Their words warmed me more than the wine. These were my people, friends who saw my success as something to celebrate, not a resource to tap into. For years, I'd forgotten what that felt like. Too often, I'd been surrounded by people who only reached out when they needed something, who saw me as a means to an end rather than a person with my own dreams and struggles. My brother Robert stood up, his glass raised. "Hi, to David," he said, his voice steady but warm. A man who never stopped believing in himself, even when the rest of us couldn't see the vision. And to this beautiful home, where we're finally giving him the Christmas celebration he deserves. The room erupted in cheers, glasses clinking, and laughter bubbling up like champagne. For the first time in years, I felt truly valued, not for what I could provide, but for who I was. Patricia was in her element, snapping photos. All night, candid shots of friends laughing, group photos by the fireplace, and artsy close-ups of the dinner table's elegant spread. "These are going straight to Facebook," she declared, her fingers already tapping away at her phone. "The world needs to see how perfect this is." I didn't stop her. Let the world see what success looked like when shared with the right people. But as the party hit its peak, my phone started buzzing in my pocket, persistent and impossible to ignore. I slipped it out just enough to glance at the screen, and my heart sank. Brianna, my daughter. The familiar tightness gripped my chest, but I excused myself from the table with a polite smile and made my way down the hall to my home office. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses faded as I closed the door behind me. That I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Brianna. What the hell is this?" Her voice was sharp, cutting through the line like a knife. No hello, no warmth, just anger. "Patricia Webb just posted photos of some fancy party at your house with Robert and everyone. What's going on?" I leaned against my desk, steadying myself. "It's Christmas dinner, Brianna. You said you wanted to spend a quiet Christmas with Cody's family." I never said that. Her denial was so quick, so defensive, it almost made me laugh. "Would you like me to read your text back to you?" I pulled up the message on my phone and read it aloud, word for word. "We want to sit quietly for Christmas with the in-laws." What part of that was unclear? "You're twisting my words," she snapped, her voice rising. "You knew what I meant." "No, Brianna, I didn't. I took your words at face value. You said you wanted a quiet Christmas with Cody's family, so I made other plans." "You went behind my back," she accused. "You invited everyone except us." "I invited people who wanted to spend Christmas with me," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "You made it clear you had other plans." Her breathing was loud. Through the phone, quick and frustrated. Then came the real question, the one I'd been waiting for. Where did this house even come from? How can you afford a place like this? Where's all this money coming from? And there it was. Not hurt about missing Christmas dinner, not sadness about being left out. Just shock and suspicion about wealth she didn't know I had. Money she couldn't control. "I've been successful, Brianna," I said simply. "More successful than you realized." "Successful how?" she pressed. You never told me about buying a house like this. You never told me about having this kind of money. Something shifted inside me, a cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. I don't owe you a financial report, I said, my voice steady. I'm a grown man who made smart investments and built a successful business. This house is the result of 30 years of hard work. But, Dad, she started, her tone softer now, almost pleading. No. I cut her off, sharper than I intended. I won't be guilt-tripped for celebrating with people who actually appreciate me. I won't apologize for having success you didn't know about. And I won't pretend your text meant anything other than what it said. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with years of unspoken tension. For 30 years, I'd been a father who gave everything, money, time, support, only to feel like a bank account to my daughter. Every conversation seemed to start with what she needed, never with how I was doing or what I wanted. You're being spiteful, she said finally, her voice low and accusing. This is because I couldn't come to dinner one time. This isn't about one dinner, I said, my voice steady but firm. This is about 30 years of being treated like a resource instead of a father. Every call, every visit, it's always about what you need from me, never about what you can give back. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you cared about my life unless it involved something I could do for you? Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear her searching for a response, but none came. The fire crackled in the living room, casting a warm glow over the Christmas decorations. Laughter and the clink of wine glasses filled the air as my friends enjoyed the holiday dinner I'd spent weeks planning. But a knot of worry twisted in my stomach. My phone buzzed again, the third time in an hour. I didn't need to check the screen to know it was my daughter, Brianna, texting another angry message. She was furious I'd chosen to host this dinner at my new villa instead of giving in to her demands to cancel it and spend Christmas her way, at her house, with her rules. Robert, my oldest friend, noticed my unease. He placed a steady hand on my shoulder. She hung up on you again, didn't she? He asked quietly, his voice cutting through the festive chatter. I nodded, my throat tight. She was yelling, making threats about showing up here. Robert's face hardened. That's not how someone acts when they want to fix things, David. That's what people do when they're used to getting their way and it stops working. His words hit me hard, like a truth I'd been avoiding for years. Before I could respond, Tom Richardson appeared in the kitchen doorway, his wife Linda close behind. Sorry to interrupt, Tom said, his brow furrowed. You look stressed. David, everything okay? I opened my mouth to brush it off, but Robert spoke first. Family drama. David's daughter is upset because he's hosting Christmas instead of doing whatever she wants. His bluntness made me wince, but it was the truth. Tom's expression shifted, like he'd heard this story before. Oh, I know that one. The entitled kid syndrome. Linda and I went through the same thing with her brother. Guy was 45, still acting like we owed him money for his fancy lifestyle. He shook his head, almost amused. We cut him off. Best thing we ever did. What happened? I asked, genuinely curious. Tom leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. He threw a fit, said he'd never speak to us again, the whole show. 6 months later, he showed up with a job, an apology, and some actual respect. Linda stepped forward, drawn by the serious tone. Are we talking about family boundary problems? Because I could write a book on that. Her voice was light, but her eyes were sharp with experience. Soon, other guests drifted into the kitchen, pulled in by the shift in conversation. One by one, they shared their own stories. Patricia Webb talked about her adult son who expected handouts while giving nothing back. Mark Henderson described a sister who used guilt to manipulate their parents. Sarah Johnson, usually so quiet, admitted her mother still tried to control her life with emotional blackmail. The hardest part, Patricia said, her voice soft but firm, is realizing love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes, saying no is the kindest thing you can do. Mark nodded. My dad always said respect isn't something you get just because you're family. You have to earn it, same as anyone else. Their words sank in, loosening the weight I'd carried for so long. These weren't just friends offering advice. They were people who'd seen me let Brianna walk all over me for years. They'd watched me give in to her demands, cancel plans to please her, and apologize for things that weren't my fault. I hadn't realized how clear the pattern was to everyone else. You don't owe anyone your self-respect, Robert said quietly, his hand still on my shoulder. Not even your daughter. The evening moved on, and the heavy mood lifted. Laughter returned, and we talked about lighter things, Christmas traditions, new recipes, plans for the new year. But the support from my friends lingered, like a warm blanket I hadn't known I needed. I felt stronger, more certain than I had in years. Around 10 p.m., as I refilled wine glasses, a sound outside broke my focus. Car doors slammed, followed by the crunch of heavy footsteps on the gravel driveway. I glanced toward the front windows, but the darkness outside swallowed everything beyond the soft glow of the landscape lights. My stomach tightened. Probably. Just the neighbors coming home late, Sarah said, noticing my distraction. I nodded, trying to shake the uneasy feeling, but the footsteps had been too sharp, too purposeful, like someone marching with a mission point. 20 minutes later, the pounding started. Not a polite knock or the chime of the doorbell, but a violent, relentless hammering on the front door. The solid oak shuddered in its frame, and the room fell silent. Wine glasses hovered in midair, and every face turned toward the entrance, eyes wide with shock. "Open this door right now, Dad." Brianna's voice sliced through the night, sharp and furious. "I know you're in there." My heart sank. She'd actually done it. She'd driven across town to make a scene in front of my guests, on Christmas, no less. The pounding grew louder, more aggressive. "Brianna, calm down," I called, moving toward the door with slow, deliberate steps. "We can talk about this. Like adults." "Don't tell me what to do," she screamed, her voice so shrill it made several guests flinch. "This is ridiculous. You can't just shut out your own family because you're having some kind of midlife crisis." Cody, her husband, chimed in, his voice weaker, almost pleading. "Come on, David. Just open the door. We can sort this out." I glanced back at my friends, who'd come for a peaceful holiday dinner and now found themselves in the middle of a family showdown. Their faces showed a mix of embarrassment, anger, and sympathy. "I'm so sorry about this," I said to the room. "Don't apologize," Robert said firmly, stepping forward. "You're not responsible for her actions." The pounding grew, even louder, shaking the doorframe. I could imagine my neighbors peering out their windows, the whole street buzzing with gossip by morning. I reached for the deadbolt, knowing I had to stop this before it got worse. The moment the lock clicked, the door burst open, slamming against the wall with a loud bang. Brianna stormed in like a tornado, her face red with rage. Cody trailed behind, looking like a man who'd given up trying to reason with her. "How dare you?" she shouted, pointing a trembling finger at me. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the elegant furnishings, the crystal stemware, the carefully set table. "How dare you throw some fancy party and leave out your own daughter?" The living room was dead silent, except for the steady tick of the mantel clock. 10 pairs of eyes watched my 32-year-old daughter throw a tantrum like a spoiled child. "Brianna," I said, keeping my voice calm, "you're making a scene." "I don't care," she snapped, spinning to face the guests. "Where did all this come from? How long have you been hiding money from me?" Her words were absurd, accusing me of some grand conspiracy because I dared to host a dinner without her approval. Patricia stepped forward, her phone in hand, her voice steady. "Excuse me, but this is a private dinner party. You're being incredibly rude." Brianna's head whipped toward her. You're the one posting pictures on Facebook, rubbing this in my face. This is all your fault." Patricia didn't flinch. "I posted photos of a lovely evening with friends. There's nothing wrong with that. It's wrong because I wasn't invited." Brianna shouted, her voice cracking with anger. "You declined," I said quietly. "In writing. You said you didn't want to come." "That's not what I meant, and you know it," she fired back, her logic crumbling under the weight of her emotions. The absurdity of the situation settled over the room. Here was a grown woman, furious that her father had chosen to celebrate Christmas with people who actually wanted to be there. Tom Richardson cleared his throat, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. This behavior is completely out of line." "Don't tell me what's out of line." Brianna spun toward him. "This is between me and my father." "Not anymore," Robert said, his tone carrying a warning. "You've made it everyone's business by barging in here and yelling." Cody shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking up. "Maybe we should just go, Brianna." "No," she snapped, silencing him with a glare. I'm not leaving until this is settled. The room felt like it was holding its breath. My friends stood together, their support unwavering, but the weight of Brianna's anger pressed against me. I realized then that this wasn't just about Christmas dinner. It was about years of giving in, of letting her demands dictate my life. And for the first time, surrounded by people who saw the truth, I felt ready to draw a line. Brianna, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos, you need to leave. We can talk tomorrow when you're calm. Her eyes widened, shocked that I wasn't backing down. You're choosing them over me? She demanded, gesturing at my friends. I'm choosing peace, I said simply. And I think you should, too. For a moment, she stood frozen, her anger warring with the reality of the situation. Then, with a final glare, she turned and stormed out, Cody hurrying after her. The door slammed shut, and the silence that followed was heavy but freeing. My friends didn't rush to fill it with words. Instead, they offered quiet nods, a hand on my arm, a look that said they understood. The evening wound down, the warmth of the gathering returned. We didn't talk about Brianna again, but the strength I'd found in that moment stayed with me. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The dining room was warm with the glow of candlelight, filled with the soft clinking of wine glasses and the hum of friendly chatter. My guests, old friends and close family, sat around the polished oak table, their faces lit with smiles as they shared stories and passed platters of roasted turkey and creamy mashed potatoes. It was the kind of Christmas dinner I'd always dreamed of hosting in my new villa, a place I'd worked hard to make my own. But the peace of the evening shattered when my daughter, Brianna, stormed through the front door, her face twisted with anger. She yanked her phone from her purse, her fingers flying across the screen. What are you doing? I asked, my voice steady but uneasy. She looked up, her eyes sharp and cold, a smile curling her lips that sent a chill down my spine. I'm calling the police, she said. If you won't listen to me, maybe they'll make you understand. The room fell silent. My guests, successful, kind-hearted people who'd done nothing but accept my invitation to dinner, stared in shock. The police? Linda Richardson, a longtime friend, said, her voice trembling with disbelief. For what? For this. She waved a hand at the table, where plates of food and half-empty wine glasses sat in quiet harmony. Brianna's arm swept wildly around the room. For stealing our family Christmas. For hiding money. For elder abuse. The last accusation hit like a slap, poisoning the air. My guests gasped, their eyes darting between me and my daughter. I stood frozen, watching Brianna press the phone. To her ear, her voice sharp as she spoke to the dispatcher. She was weaponizing the police because I dared to celebrate Christmas without her approval. Outside, the wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the calm of my quiet suburban neighborhood. Red and blue lights flashed through the villas. Tall windows, casting eerie shadows across the stunned faces of my guests. Two officers stepped out of the patrol car, a veteran sergeant with graying hair and a younger officer clutching a tablet. They walked up the driveway with calm, professional steps, though I noticed their eyes scanning the peaceful street, clearly puzzled by the call. Good evening, the older officer said when I opened the door. I'm Sergeant Martinez, and this is Officer Norman. We got a complaint about excessive noise and a possible domestic disturbance. Before I could speak, Brianna pushed past me, her voice loud and urgent. Thank you for coming. They're having this loud, disruptive party, and they're completely harassing me. Sergeant Martinez's eyes swept the room. He saw my guests, well-dressed, middle-aged and older, holding wine glasses, with soft jazz playing in the background. The scene was anything but chaotic. Ma'am, can you step outside, please? He said to Brianna, then turned to me. Sir, is this your home? Yes, it is, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is just a quiet Christmas dinner with family and friends. The sergeant nodded to Officer Norman, who started typing on his tablet. How many people are here? Martinez asked. 10 guests, I replied. We've been eating dinner, talking, and listening to music. Nothing loud. Officer Norman glanced at his watch. It's almost 11 p.m., and I can barely hear your conversation from out here. The noise level seems reasonable. Brianna's voice shot up, frantic. It was much louder earlier. They were being completely inappropriate for a neighborhood like this. The sergeant turned to her. Ma'am, what's your relationship to the homeowner? He's my father, Brianna said, her tone sharp. And he's been excluding me from family events. This is elder abuse. The accusation hung heavy, like a storm cloud over the room. My guests shifted uncomfortably, their shock palpable. Sergeant Martinez looked at me, his expression steady. Sir, do you feel abused or threatened in any way? No, officer, I said firmly. I'm hosting a voluntary gathering in my own home. These are my friends and family who wanted to celebrate together. My brother Robert stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Officers, I'm David's brother. Brianna sent a text this morning saying she wanted a quiet Christmas with her in-laws instead of joining us. So David invited people who actually wanted to be here. Do you have that text? Officer Norman asked. Robert pulled out his phone and showed them the message thread I'd forwarded earlier. Sergeant Martinez read it carefully, his face unreadable. The text was clear. Brianna had declined to join us, saying she and her husband, Cody, preferred a low-key day with his parents. That's not what I meant. Brianna's voice cracked with frustration. He misunderstood me. The message seems pretty clear, Officer Norman said, his tone polite but firm. Cody, who'd been hovering silently behind Brianna, finally spoke, his voice weak. Maybe we should just go home and sort this out privately. No, Brianna snapped, turning on him. They need to understand how wrong this is. Tom Richardson, another guest, stepped forward, his voice gentle but exasperated. Officers, I'm sorry you were dragged out here for this. We're just a group of older folks having a quiet dinner. Hardly a wild party. Sergeant Martinez's expression softened, as if he was piecing together the real story. Sir, he asked me, have any neighbors complained about noise? Not that I know of, I said. We haven't had any other calls about this address. Officer Norman confirmed, checking his tablet. How did you know about this gathering, ma'am? Martinez asked Brianna, her face flushed. I saw photos on Facebook. The officers exchanged a quick glance, their expressions saying everything they didn't voice. Ma'am, Martinez said, you called in a noise complaint about an event you learned about through social media? It's the principal, Brianna insisted, her voice shaking. This is harassment. The sergeant turned to me. Sir, you have every right to have guests in your home, as long as you're not breaking any noise laws. From what we see, you're well within reason. He paused, then looked at Brianna. What about the elder abuse claim? Brianna's eyes darted to me, desperate. I met the sergeant's gaze. Officer, the only person making me feel threatened is the one who called you. Martinez nodded slightly, as if he understood the deeper dynamics. Ma'am, he said to Brianna, filing false reports is a serious matter. We need you to move your car. It's blocking the driveway. And let these people enjoy their evening. Brianna stared at him, her mouth open in disbelief. Her plan had backfired completely. This isn't over, she said to me, her voice quieter now, less certain. The officers walked back to their car, the red and blue lights fading as they drove away. Brianna stood on my doorstep, her shoulders slumped, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. Cody stood beside her, staring at the ground, clearly embarrassed. Brianna, I said softly, would you like to come inside and talk privately? Her eyes flickered with surprise, maybe even hope, as if she thought she'd finally gotten through to me. I led her to my home office, while Robert guided the guests back to the living room to give us space. Cody stayed in the foyer, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Dad. Brianna started the moment I closed the office door. I need you to understand something. I never meant for things to go this far. That text message, I didn't mean it the way you took it. Then help me understand what you meant, I said, sitting at my desk and folding my hands. She paced in front of my bookshelf, her hands moving as she spoke. I meant Cody, and I wanted a quiet Christmas morning with his parents. I always assumed we'd see you later for dinner or something. It's what we've always done. You never mentioned dinner, I said. You never asked about my plans. You just assumed. But we always work something out, she said, her voice rising. You're twisting this into something it's not. I leaned back, studying her. Brianna, when was the last time you called me just to check in? Not because you needed something, but just to talk? She stopped pacing, her face tightening. That's not fair. It's a simple question, I said. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken expectations. Finally, she said, you're making this about something it's not. Then what is it about? I asked. It's about this. She gestured at the room, the house. This beautiful villa I didn't even know you had. All this money you never told me about. How long have you been hiding this from me? There it was, the real issue. Not Christmas, not family traditions, but control, access, the fear that I was slipping out of her grasp. I haven't been hiding anything, I said. I've worked hard, and yes, I've been more successful than you realized. But why do I owe you a report of my finances? Do I need your permission to live my life? Her face flushed again. That's not what I mean. I need to know you're still there for me, that nothing's changed. Something broke inside me, a mix of sadness and clarity. What if things have changed, Brianna? What if I'm tired of being treated like a bank account? What if I want a relationship with my daughter that's about love, not what I can give you? You're being dramatic, she said, her voice sharp. I don't treat you like that. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our text history. Your last 10 messages to me. Dad, can you help with the car payment? Dad, the roof needs fixing. Dad, Cody's out of work again. When was the last time you texted to ask how I'm doing? To share something good in your life? To just say hello? She stared at the screen, her lips trembling, but no words came out. I love you, Brianna, I said. I always will. But I can't keep enabling a relationship that only goes one way. You can't just cut me off, she cried. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm asking for respect, for a real connection. Her expression hardened. This is because of Robert, isn't it? He's always been jealous of us. I stood, the weight of the moment settling over me. This is because I finally realized I deserve better than being taken for granted. Tears welled in her eyes, but even those felt like a tactic, a last-ditch effort to pull me back into her. Control. Please, Dad, she whispered. Don't do this. I need you. You need my money, I said quietly. There's a difference. I walked toward the door, ready to rejoin my guests, people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Behind me, Brianna's voice broke. This isn't over. But as I stepped into the hallway, seeing my reflection in the window, I knew it was. My decision was clear, solid as stone. Brianna's heels clicked frantically behind me as she followed, her desperation palpable. The moment we entered the living room, she launched into another tirade, her voice echoing off the walls. You can't do this to me, she shouted, her hands clenched. You're my father. You owe me. The guests froze, their eyes wide. Robert stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Brianna, enough. You've made your point. Let's not ruin this night any further. She turned on him, her face red. Stay out of this, Uncle Robert. You've always had it out for me. Linda Richardson stood, her voice gentle but resolute. Brianna, we're all here because we care about your dad. Maybe you should take a moment and think about what you're doing. Brianna's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but finding none. Cody, still in the foyer, finally spoke up. Bree, let's go. This isn't helping. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, but the weight of everyone's stares seemed to sink in. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, Cody trailing behind her. As the door slammed shut, the room let out a collective breath that I turned to my guests, forcing a smile. I'm sorry for all that, I said. Let's try to enjoy the rest of the evening. But as we returned to the table, the warmth of the night had dimmed. The food was cold, the conversation stilted. Yet, deep inside, I felt a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself, my peace, my boundaries, my life. And no amount of drama could take that away. The dining room was alive with laughter and the clink of glasses as my closest friends gathered for our annual holiday dinner. The warmth of good company filled my home, a sprawling house I'd bought years ago with the fruits of my labor. But the joy of the evening shattered when my daughter, Brianna, stormed through the front door, her face twisted with anger. Her husband, Cody, trailed behind her, looking uneasy, as if he knew this wasn't going to end well. I need everyone to listen to me, Brianna shouted, planting herself in the middle of the room, her voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. All eyes turned to her, the festive mood evaporating. My father has been hiding money from our family for years, money that should have been shared with us. The room went silent. My guests, 10 of my oldest friends, froze, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort as they glanced between Brianna and me. I felt my stomach tighten. This wasn't the first time Brianna had made a scene, but tonight felt different, more desperate. Brianna, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. This isn't the time or place. No, she snapped, spinning to face Tom Richardson, one of my oldest business partners. Did you know he bought this house without even telling me? $2.8 million. Where do you think that money came from? Tom's eyebrows shot up, but his voice stayed calm. From his investments and hard work, I'd guess. Same place my money comes. From. You don't get it. Brianna's voice rose, her hands gesturing wildly. He's been hiding assets, manipulating financial records, stealing from family accounts to fund this fancy lifestyle. That's enough. Robert, another longtime friend, said sharply, stepping forward. His tone carried a warning, the kind you don't ignore. You're throwing around accusations you can't prove. I can prove it. Brianna shot back, her eyes blazing. He's been taking money from accounts that belong to our family. Patricia Webb, who'd known me since our college days, let out a sharp laugh that cut through the tension. Brianna, your father showed us his investment portfolio 3 years ago when he was thinking about retiring. Every single dollar came from legitimate investments he made long before you were even born. She's right. Mark Henderson chimed in, leaning back in his chair. David, didn't you get into Bitcoin way back when it was dirt cheap, like under $100? I nodded, keeping my voice even. Bought my first coins in 2011. And then there were the tech startups I invested in starting in 2015. 3 went public, and 2 were bought out by bigger companies. The room seemed to shift as the truth settled in. My wealth wasn't some dark secret or stolen fortune. It was the result of years of calculated risks and hard work, documented and witnessed by the people in this room, people who'd known me for decades. Brianna's face turned red, her confidence crumbling as the reality hit her. But he never told me, she protested, her voice cracking with frustration. I'm his daughter. Why didn't he tell me about any of this? Sarah, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up, her voice sharp and unforgiving. Why would he? You've never shown any interest in his life unless you wanted something from him. The words hung in the air like a slap. Even Cody, standing awkwardly behind his wife, shifted uncomfortably, as if he was finally seeing how others viewed her. Brianna's eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but found none. That's not true, she said, her voice trembling. I've always cared about my father. When? Robert challenged, crossing his arms. When was the last time you called to check on him? To ask about his health, his dreams, his life? Silence. When was the last time you invited him over for dinner? At your place? Patricia added, her tone softer but no less pointed. More silence. When was the last time you celebrated one of his successes without thinking about what you could get out of it? Tom's question landed like a punch, his disappointment. Cleared up. Brianna's gaze swept the room, her isolation complete. Even Cody couldn't meet her eyes, his head bowed as if he carried the weight of her actions. You don't understand our relationship, she whispered, her voice barely audible, desperate. We understand it perfectly, I said quietly, feeling a lifetime of pain and frustration rise to the surface. And that's the problem. I took a deep breath, the weight of 30 years lifting from my chest. Brianna, Cody, I want you both to leave my home. And I don't want you to come back. The words fell into a stunned silence. Brianna stared at me, her eyes wide with shock, as if I'd spoken in a language she didn't understand. Dad, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, I said, my voice steady. You're my daughter, but that doesn't give you the right to treat me like a bank account. For 30 years, I've let you use me without giving anything back. Not love, not respect, nothing. I turned and walked toward the foyer, expecting them to follow. When they didn't move, I looked back. I said, leave. This is crazy. Brianna's voice rose to a near hysterical pitch. You're tearing our family apart over nothing. Nothing. Robert's voice boomed with disbelief. You called the police on your own father for hosting a dinner party in his own home. You accused him of elder abuse in front of those officers, Patricia added, her voice dripping with disdain. You barged into his house uninvited and attacked him in front of his friends, Tom said, his face showing pure disgust. Each accusation hit Brianna like a hammer, her expression crumbling under the weight of the truth. She turned to Cody, her voice pleading. Cody, tell them. Tell them they're wrong. Cody looked at her for a long moment, then at me. His shoulders slumped, and his voice was heavy with defeat. Brianna, we should go. You too, she gasped, her voice breaking. You're taking his side? I'm not taking sides, Cody said quietly. I'm seeing the truth. And deep down, you know he's right. I walked to the front door and opened it, letting the cold December air rush in. It felt sharp and clean, like a fresh start. For 30 years, I've let this behavior go on, and it's hurt both of us, I said calmly. I won't spend the rest of my life being treated like a resource instead of a person. I'll change, Brianna pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I swear I'll be different. I'll call more, show more appreciation, be a better daughter. You've had 30 years to change, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. Tonight, show me you can't. You're my daughter, but that doesn't mean you get to disrespect me. I'm a human being, and I deserve better. She looked around the room one last time, her eyes begging for someone, anyone, to take her side. But all she saw were stern faces and shaking heads, my friends standing united in their support for me. You'll regret this, Brianna said, her voice hardening as she wiped her tears. All of you will regret siding with him when you find out what kind of man he really is. We already know what kind of man he is, Sarah said firmly, stepping closer to me. We've known for decades. That's why we're here tonight, celebrating with him. Robert moved to stand beside me at the open door. Brianna, it's time to go. She hesitated, then walked toward the exit, Cody trailing behind her, his face a mix of shame and resignation. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. This isn't over, Dad. I won't let you cut me out of your life like this. Yes, it is over, I said softly. You cut yourself out the moment you chose manipulation over love. I closed the door. Behind them, the deadbolt clicking into place with a finality that echoed through the quiet house. Outside, I heard their car start and drive away, the sound fading into the night. For a moment, I stood in the foyer, my hand still on the lock, letting the weight of what had just happened sink in 30 years. 30 years of enabling Brianna's behavior, of walking on eggshells to avoid her outbursts, of hoping she'd one day see me as more than a source of money. 30 years of being treated like a tool instead of a father. But now, it was over. Behind me, the soft murmur of my friends' voices started up again, the warmth of their laughter returning to fill the house. These were the people who truly cared about me, who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. For the first time in decades, my home felt like a sanctuary, a place of love and respect. I turned back to the dining room, where my friends were already passing around plates of dessert, their conversation picking up as if the interruption had never happened. Patricia caught my eye and gave me a small, understanding nod. Tom raised his glass in a quiet toast. Sarah reached out and squeezed my hand as I sat down. You did the right thing, she whispered. I nodded, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had finally learned the difference between being used and being loved, and it felt like freedom. For the first time in 30 years, I was surrounded only by people who saw me as a person, not a resource. And as the laughter and warmth of the evening wrapped around me, I knew I'd made the right choice. The night stretched on, filled with stories and shared memories, each moment a reminder of the life I'd built with people who truly cared. The weight of Brianna's accusations, her manipulations, her demands, they were gone, left outside in the cold December air. And as I looked around at my friends, my real family, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The heavy burden I'd carried for so long slipped away, like morning mist dissolving over the hills. I felt lighter, as if I could breathe freely for the first time in years. When I turned back to the living room, my friends were waiting there, faces glowing with pride and respect, emotions I hadn't seen directed at me in what felt like forever. David, Patricia said softly, her voice warm with admiration. That took incredible strength. Tom Richardson stood up, his hands coming together in a slow, deliberate clap. One by one, the others joined in: Linda, Sarah, Mark, and Robert, until the room filled with the sound of genuine applause. It wasn't for a show or a performance, but for a man who had finally stood up for himself, choosing dignity over years of pain. You handled that with more grace than she ever deserved, Linda said, her eyes shining with sincerity. Robert stepped forward, and pulled me into a tight embrace. His voice was thick with emotion as he said, "I've been waiting 30 years to see you do this, David. I'm so proud of you." The weight of their words hit me like a tidal wave. These people, my true family, had seen everything. They'd watched Brianna's true nature reveal itself over the years, and they'd witnessed my transformation tonight. They weren't just clapping for me. They were celebrating justice, the kind that comes when someone finally breaks free from a toxic cycle. Sarah raised her wine glass, her smile radiant. "To David Collins," she said, "a man who chose dignity over guilt and peace over chaos." "To real friendships," Mark added, lifting his glass. "To knowing your worth," Patricia said, her voice steady and sure. We clinked our glasses together, and as I sipped my wine, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: the pure, unfiltered joy of being valued for who I was, not for what I could give. It was a feeling so powerful it nearly brought me to tears. Robert pulled me aside as the others continued to laugh and talk, their voices filling the room with warmth. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "Free," I said without hesitation. "For the first time in my adult life, I feel completely free." He nodded, a knowing smile spreading across his face. "You're not losing a daughter tonight, David. You're gaining your life back." He was right. The woman who had stormed out of my house wasn't the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike all those years ago. That child was long gone, replaced by someone who saw me only as a bank account to fund her lifestyle. She'd made her choice 30 years ago, and tonight, I'd finally made mine. Linda approached us, her expression soft but serious. "David, I owe you an apology," she said. "For all the times over the years when I wanted to say something about how Brianna treated you, but stayed quiet. We all saw it. We all knew you deserved better." Tom nodded from across the room. "We should have spoken up sooner," he said. "But watching you stand up for yourself tonight, that was something beautiful to witness." Their honesty warmed me, like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. For years, I'd felt alone in my struggle, but now I realized my friends had been watching, waiting, and rooting for me all along. They'd seen the way Brianna manipulated and demanded, and they'd quietly hoped for the day I'd find the strength to say enough. The conversation shifted to the future, a future without the toxic family dynamics that had poisoned every holiday, every gathering, every moment of joy. "What will Christmas look like next year?" Sarah asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Or New Year's Eve? Or your birthday?" "You should host New Year's here," Mark suggested. "A real celebration of new beginnings." "I'd love that," I said, and I meant it. The thought of ringing in 2025 with these people, my chosen family, filled me with a kind of hope I hadn't felt in years. "And your birthday in March," Patricia added. "A proper celebration for a man who deserves to be celebrated." For the first time in what felt like forever, I was excited about the future. No more tiptoeing around someone else's moods. No more bracing for the next demand or criticism. Just real, honest relationships built on mutual respect and love. "I can't believe I actually did it," I said, almost to myself, as the reality of the evening sank in. "Believe it," Robert said firmly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You chose yourself tonight, David. You chose peace." By 2:30 a.m., the emotional weight of the night had settled over us, and people began to gather their coats. Dawn wasn't far off, and we were all exhausted from the intensity of the evening. As each person prepared to leave, I thanked them from the bottom of my heart. "Thank you for being here," I said, "for witnessing this, for supporting me, for being my real family." The hugs were longer, warmer, more meaningful than any I'd experienced in years. These weren't polite, obligatory gestures. They were bonds forged in truth, strengthened by the justice we'd all witnessed. As the last car pulled out of my driveway, I stepped back into my villa. The house felt different now, bigger somehow, as if letting go of that toxic energy had expanded the very walls. I wandered through the rooms, each one feeling truly mine for the first time. No guilt lingered in the corners, no manipulation haunted the air, no strings tied me to someone else's demands. That I in the kitchen, where this long journey had begun 18 hours earlier, I made myself a cup of coffee and stood at the window, looking out over my garden. The landscape lights twinkled like stars, but now they seemed to shine with possibility rather than just illuminating my property. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Thank you for showing us what real courage looks like. Sweet dreams, my friend. Then one from Tom. Your home will always be a place of love and respect. Sleep well. And Sarah, call us anytime. We're your real family now. Each message felt like a warm embrace, a reminder that I'd made the right choice. I thought about my resources, my investments, my villa, the financial freedom I'd worked so hard to build over decades. For the first time, they were truly mine to enjoy, to share as I saw fit, without the weight of guilt or obligation. No more worrying about being fair to someone who had never shown fairness to me. The possibilities stretched out before me. I could travel, take that river cruise through Europe I'd dreamed of for years. I could visit the vineyards in Tuscany, sip wine under the Italian sun, or maybe take a cooking class in Paris, learning to make croissants from scratch. The world felt open, alive with opportunities one hadn't dared to imagine since I was young. Or I could stay right here and build the kind of home I'd always wanted. One filled with laughter instead of tension, appreciation instead of demands, love instead of duty. I could host dinners with friends, play music late into the night, and fill these rooms with the kind of joy I'd been missing for so long. The eastern windows began to glow with the first light of dawn. Christmas Eve was beginning, and for the first time in 30 years, I was genuinely excited about the holiday. No more walking on eggshells, no more carefully choosing gifts to avoid criticism, no more calculating how much money would buy temporary peace. Just the simple, beautiful pleasure of celebrating with people who wanted to be there, who valued me for me. My phone rang, and I saw Robert's name on the screen. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice steady and kind. "Better than I've felt in decades," I said honestly. "I keep waiting for the guilt to hit, but it's not coming." "It won't," he said with certainty. "Guilt comes when you've done something wrong, and you did nothing wrong tonight. You protected your dignity, David. You chose yourself." "I think I'll spend Christmas Day alone," I said, the idea forming as I spoke. "Not lonely, alone. There's a difference." "There absolutely is," Robert agreed. "And you've earned the right to that kind of peaceful solitude." After we hung up, I stepped out onto my terrace. The December air was crisp, carrying the fresh scent of pine and the promise of new seasons. The sun crested the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. At 63, I was finally beginning my authentic life. The years ahead stretched out before me, filled with possibility rather than obligation, respect rather than exploitation, joy rather than guilt. I thought about calling a travel agent later that day. Maybe I'd book a trip to Ireland for St. Patrick's Day, to see the rolling green hills and hear the music of Dublin's pubs. Or perhaps I'd head to Australia for their autumn, exploring the outback or strolling along Sydney's beaches. The freedom to make plans without checking someone else's emotional calendar felt like a revolution in itself. As the sunrise bathed my villa in golden light, I realized this wasn't just Christmas morning. It was the first day of my real life. I had chosen dignity over duty, peace over chaos, self-respect over family obligation. And it felt like coming home to myself after a lifetime of being a stranger in my own story. The best gift I'd ever given myself was the courage to demand the respect I'd spent 63 years earning. Christmas had finally come home, and it brought with it the promise of a life filled with love, authenticity, and the freedom to be myself.